It started with a simple afternoon errand, one that would change everything. When Ava walked into that upscale boutique, all she wanted was to buy a dress. What she got instead was a silent, calculated reminder that for some people, skin color still determines worth. But what the store manager didn't know was who Ava really was, and what she was about to do would shake the entire company from the inside out. Now, let me take you to the moment it all began. The sun was sharp but golden as it cast a warm glow across downtown Chicago. Ava Matthews stepped out of her black Audi, her heels tapping against the pavement as she crossed the street toward Elon Boutique, one of the city's most exclusive designer showrooms. Dressed in a tailored ivory coat and clutching a small handbag, Ava looked like any other successful young professional. Her natural curls bounced gently with each step, her eyes shielded by designer sunglasses. She was calm, confident, peace. Inside the store, it was quiet, luxurious quiet. Soft jazz played beneath the buzz of fluorescent lights that sparkled off glass displays. Racks of minimalist, absurdly expensive fashion lined the walls like museum exhibits. A handful of shoppers lingered, speaking in hushed tones. The scent of expensive perfume hung in the air. Ava approached the front desk, where a tall, rail-thin woman with perfectly ironed hair and a forced smile was typing something into the register. "Hi," Ava said with a friendly nod. "I saw a dress in the window, the navy one with the wraparound belt. Do you have it in a size 8? The woman looked up, blinked slowly. Something changed in her eyes. "We're currently by appointment only," she said, lips tight. "Oh," Ava replied, glancing around. "I didn't see a sign." The door was open. "It's policy," the woman said, her voice clipped now. "You should check the website." Ava's smile faltered slightly. "Could I just take a look for a second?" "I'm happy to be quick." The woman cut her off. "Ma'am, we really don't do walk-ins. Maybe try the outlet down on Monroe Street." Ava stared at her. The outlet? She hadn't even heard of it. But she heard the message loud and clear. It wasn't about appointments. It wasn't about policy. It was about her. Her skin. Ava's jaw tightened. Her voice dropped an octave, not in anger, but in control. "I understand," she said, stepping back. "Thanks for your time." And she walked out. Outside, she stood frozen for a moment. Not hurt, not confused, just stunned. In 2025, in a city as diverse as Chicago, in a store that claimed to be progressive, inclusive, and designed for every woman. But Ava Matthews was not every woman in their eyes. And that was their first mistake. The next day, Ava sat in her office overlooking Lake Michigan. She was dressed in a fitted charcoal suit, gold hoop earrings glinting beneath the soft glow of a crystal lamp. A large screen behind her desk displayed data charts and investment forecasts. She was not a stylist, not a model, not just another shopper. Ava was the chief investment officer of M2 Ventures, a private equity firm known for acquiring undervalued fashion and lifestyle brands and turning them into industry giants. Her job wasn't just about money. It was about power, control, vision, and now, a little bit of revenge. She turned to her assistant, Matteo, who stood by the doorway holding a coffee and a notepad. "I want everything on Elon Boutique," she said, voice firm. Matteo blinked. "The one on Madison Avenue?" She nodded. "I want to know who owns it, what their margins are, lease agreements, franchising, if they're public, if they're struggling, or if they're sitting on a PR time bomb. I want the full picture." Matteo grinned. He'd seen that look in her eyes before. She wasn't just investigating a company. She was preparing to own it. Within hours, the facts started pouring in. Elon Boutique was a mid-sized retail chain with 14 locations in upscale neighborhoods across the country. Founded by a mother-daughter duo in 2009, the brand had once been praised for its minimalist, inclusive aesthetic, but recent years had shown stagnation. Sales were down 22% year-over-year. Employee turnover was rising. Several reviews on Glassdoor hinted at toxic management and questionable hiring practices. Most importantly, the company had just declined an acquisition offer from a larger fashion house. but hadn't ruled out further negotiations. Ava's fingers drummed slowly against the desk as she read through the reports. She wasn't interested in revenge for its own sake. But the more she read, the more she saw an opportunity not just to send a message, but to redefine what a brand like Elon could actually stand for. She clicked her pen. "Let's schedule a meeting with their board," she said. "Tell them M2 Ventures is interested in a full buyout." Matteo hesitated. "Should I tell them who's leading the acquisition?" Ava smiled, slow and cold. "Not yet," she said. "Let's keep that part a surprise." A month after her quiet exit from Elon Boutique, Ava Matthews was standing in the glass-walled boardroom of the very company that had once turned her away. The building was sleek but unimpressive, a holdover from a time when appearances mattered more than operations. The air inside the boardroom buzzed with anticipation. A dozen eyes followed Ava as she entered. Men in tailored suits, women in crisp blouses, all clearly intrigued by the presence of a woman they knew nothing about, except that she had the kind of power that made people nervous. A man near the head of the table stood to greet her. "Ms. Matthews, welcome. I'm Carter Linden, CFO of Elon. We're excited to hear your offer." Ava nodded, taking a seat without waiting to be invited. "Let's talk numbers." What followed was a meticulously orchestrated presentation. Ava outlined M2 Ventures' vision for Elon Boutique, streamlining the supply chain, expanding digital storefronts, and revitalizing the brand image for a younger, more inclusive demographic. She spoke with clarity and precision, weaving in projected ROI curves, expansion models, and brand repositioning strategies. But it wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it. She spoke like a woman who already owned the room, who already owned them. And by the end of the meeting, the board was nodding, murmuring, exchanging glances of cautious optimism. The deal was signed within 2 weeks. Elon Boutique was now under the full control of M2 Ventures, and Ava Matthews was its new CEO. The transition was swift and quiet. The press release was clean, sterile, uncontroversial. M2 Ventures acquires Elon Boutique in strategic lifestyle portfolio expansion. There were no public mentions of the store incident. No photos, no interviews. But inside the company, things began to change almost immediately. Ava started with the numbers. She reviewed every department: finance, marketing, HR. But it was human resources that raised her eyebrows the highest. The hiring data revealed an uncomfortable truth. Elon's internal culture was built on quiet exclusion. Of 240 employees across 14 locations, less than 8% were people of color. Less than 3% held leadership roles. There were no formal diversity training protocols, no anti-bias procedures, no DEI oversight. And then came the customer data. Complaints, emails, reviews. Ava read through one after another, felt watched the whole time. Sales staff didn't approach me, but helped others. I didn't feel welcome. Many of the names on those complaints sounded like hers. She leaned back in her office chair and let out a long breath. The store manager who had turned her away, the thin-lipped woman behind the counter, was named Clara Bent. She managed the Chicago flagship location and had worked for Elon for 6 years. Ava smiled grimly. "Time for a visit," she said to herself. On a rainy Thursday morning, Ava returned to the boutique on Madison Avenue. Not as a customer, but as the woman in charge. She didn't wear a suit. Instead, she chose a simple, elegant navy dress. One not unlike the one she had tried to buy weeks ago. No entourage, no clipboard. Just her walking through the front doors like any other woman. Clara was behind the desk again, head bent over the register. When she looked up, there was no recognition in her face. Just the same glazed-over, professionally distant look. "Can I help you?" she asked. Ava nodded. "I'm looking for something in your executive line. Can I see your spring pieces?" Clara's eyes narrowed slightly. "Are you sure you're in the right store?" A pause. The air shifted. Ava tilted her head slightly, expression unreadable. "I'm exactly where I need to be." Clara blinked. "Well, like I told another woman last week, we're appointment only." "No, you're not," Ava interrupted. Clara froze. Ava continued, calm and direct. That policy was removed from all 14 locations as of 2 weeks ago. Your store manual should have been updated. Clara stammered. I wasn't told. That's another issue, Ava said, folding her arms. I'm Ava Matthews, your new CEO. The blood drained from Clara's face. Her mouth opened, then closed again like a fish gasping for air. I was here a few weeks ago, Ava said. You told me to try the outlet. Remember, I didn't mean, but you did, and you weren't the first. Ava's voice was still calm, but it had a razor-sharp edge now. I'm not here to shame you, Clara. I'm here to change this company. You can choose to be part of that, or not. Clara looked down, silent. Ava turned and walked deeper into the store. Behind her, Clara did not follow. Back at headquarters, Ava launched the first phase of her transformation plan, Project Mirror. A full internal audit of every store, every manager, every hiring practice. Anonymous employee surveys. Secret shopper programs. Equity and inclusion panels. Comprehensive retraining. And for the first time in its history, Elon Boutique began to reflect the women it claimed to serve. They launched new campaigns spotlighting real women, diverse, unapologetically authentic. Influencers of color were hired to represent the brand. Stores were redesigned with inclusive sizing, community bulletin spaces, and private styling sessions for women with modest or cultural dress preferences. Sales began to rise, but more importantly, so did trust. At first, the resistance was subtle, quiet, disguised behind polite smiles and strategically vague emails. But Ava Matthews had been in corporate boardrooms long enough to recognize sabotage, especially when it was dressed in designer suits and false concern. The first sign came during the quarterly leadership call. Ava had gathered all regional managers and department heads to discuss Project Mirror's early successes. The numbers were promising. Foot traffic had increased, social media engagement was up 47%, and customer satisfaction reports were the best in 5 years. But when she opened the floor for feedback, the temperature in the virtual room dropped. I just think we're moving too fast, said Marcus Delaney, the West Coast regional manager. His tone was diplomatic, but the edge in his voice was clear. Rebranding is important, but we have to consider the core clientele. We don't want to alienate loyal customers by trying to be too political. Ava's eyes narrowed. Inclusivity is not political. It's profitable. And overdue. He didn't argue further, but he didn't have to. Others followed with similar comments. Concerns about brand identity, about disrupting legacy values, about not diluting our premium image. It was coded language, dressed up fear. Ava knew it well. In the weeks that followed, things began to unravel, quietly but deliberately. Emails went unanswered. Deliverables were delayed. A new marketing campaign that Ava had personally approved, featuring 5 models of color in non-traditional beauty roles, was mysteriously put on hold due to vendor issues. Ava confronted the head of marketing, a smooth-talking exec named Brent Taylor. I signed off on this a week ago, she said, standing in his glass-walled office, holding a printed version of the campaign brief. Brent offered a weak smile. We just think it needs a little more polish. The aesthetic doesn't quite match Elon's legacy tone. Ava folded her arms. Or maybe it doesn't match your comfort zone. Brent's smile faltered. Ava took a step forward. Let me be clear. This company no longer builds its image on outdated standards of beauty. We are not selling whiteness, thinness, or elitism anymore. We're selling real women, real stories, real style. Either get behind that or step aside. Brent didn't speak. She walked out before he could. Outside of headquarters, Ava began receiving emails. Anonymous at first. A few messages on LinkedIn. Then one handwritten letter mailed directly to her office. You don't belong at Elon. You're ruining it. Another one followed. You're turning this place into a woke circus. Each message hit like a cold wind, but Ava didn't flinch. She had weathered worse. Being the only black woman in most boardrooms had trained her to recognize fragility masquerading as criticism. But then, it got personal. Mateo, her assistant, walked into her office one morning, face pale. "There's a thread on a private fashion exec forum," he said quietly. "Someone posted a photo of you at the Madison Avenue store. They're calling you a diversity hire, saying you're driving the brand into the ground." Ava took the tablet from him and scrolled. There it was, her face caught mid-step. Comments below it vicious, mocking, and venomous. "She's pushing a narrative, not a product. She should stick to nonprofits. This is what happens when you let activism run a brand." She stared at the screen, unblinking, not because it surprised her, but because she was tired of pretending it didn't hurt. She had worked twice as hard for half as much, climbed a ladder that had been greased at every rung, and now, even after owning the company, she was still being treated like she didn't belong. She set the tablet down, hands trembling, not with fear, but with fury. "This isn't just ignorance," she said aloud. "It's war." Ava called an emergency leadership summit. She stood at the front of the modern conference room, flanked by 2 projection screens. One displayed a slideshow of customer growth, employee satisfaction, press headlines praising Elon's bold new image. The other screen showed the leaked forum comments, unedited and unfiltered. "I wasn't going to share this," Ava began, voice steady. "But silence is a luxury I can't afford anymore." She turned to the room. Dozens of directors and managers looked back at her, tense. "These are your peers, maybe your friends, maybe even some of you," she said, gesturing to the ugly messages behind her. "This is what happens when a black woman doesn't just work for the company, but owns it." The room was silent. "I'm not asking for respect," Ava continued. "I'm demanding accountability. If any of you believe diversity, equity, and dignity are threats to our brand, you can leave now." No one moved. "Good," she said, "because change isn't coming. It's already here." That afternoon, Ava sent out a company-wide video address. It wasn't scripted. It wasn't polished. It was personal. She told the story start to finish. How she walked into that boutique. How she was turned away. How she bought the company. Not out of vengeance, but out of a vision for something better. More human. More just. The video went viral. Customers flooded Elon's inbox with support. Former employees thanked Ava for saying what they never could. Journalists picked up the story, dubbing her the woman who redefined luxury fashion. And behind the scenes, applications soared. Designers, creatives, stylists, many of them women of color, sent portfolios, eager to join the new Elon. Internally, 2 toxic department heads resigned. Others were quietly phased out. The tide was turning. The email came at 3:42 a.m. Ava Matthews had just drifted into sleep when her phone vibrated on the nightstand. Bleary-eyed, she glanced at the sender, Marcus Delaney. Subject line, urgent. Executive vote called. She sat upright, fully awake now. Inside the email was a digital notice invoking a rarely used clause in the company's bylaws, Article 6, Section 4, the right of the executive board to call a vote of no confidence in the acting CEO. 12 signatures. Enough to proceed. Ava's hands tightened around the phone. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't hesitation about strategy or branding. This was an ambush. Planned, timed, and orchestrated to rip the company from her hands. The next morning, Ava entered headquarters through the back entrance. The building was unusually quiet. Whispers floated down the halls. Some employees avoided her gaze. Others offered tentative nods of support. She walked into her office to find Mateo, her assistant, already pacing. "They're saying you've made Elon too divisive," he said, shaking his head. "That you're polarizing the board, alienating shareholders. There's even a memo accusing you of nepotism, claiming you've hired unqualified staff based on identity politics." Ava didn't flinch. "Who wrote it?" "Doesn't say, but I'd bet my last paycheck Brent Taylor's behind it." Of course, Brent. The same man who stalled her campaign launch, who privately called her strategy an overcorrection. Ava sat at her desk. We're not fighting for a chair anymore, Matteo. We're fighting for the whole damn table. At 1 p.m., the board convened in the executive conference room, 30 floors above street level, where windows showed the skyline but not the people in it. 12 board members sat around the table. Ava entered last, head held high, the click of her heels echoing like a countdown. Marcus, seated at the far end, stood to speak. "This is not personal," he began, voice neutral. "It's about leadership. Since Ms. Matthews took control of Elon, the brand has undergone rapid transformation. Some good, some uncertain. Shareholders are nervous. Staff turnover has increased. Our core demographic is reportedly confused." He clicked a remote. Slides appeared behind him. Revenue charts, social media sentiment snapshots, a few hand-picked customer reviews implying discomfort with the new image. Ava let him finish. Then she stood. "No CEO walks into a failing company and turns it into a global movement without some discomfort," she said. "But let's be clear, Elon wasn't just outdated. It was toxic. Exclusion was written into its fabric." She walked slowly, deliberately, down the side of the table. "Yes, I moved fast, because slow change is how systems survive. And I won't apologize for breaking a cycle that profited off making women feel like outsiders in a space built for them." Her voice sharpened. "You called this vote because I made you uncomfortable. Not because the company's failing, but because it's finally working for people you never saw." Silence. Then, a soft voice from the end of the table. "I agree," said Janessa Monroe, the newest board member. A black woman with decades in global brand leadership, she had been quiet until now. "Elon's not just profitable, it's resonating. Our media impressions are up. Conversion rates have improved. The only ones confused are the ones who never expected to share the spotlight." Marcus flushed. Brent stared at the table. Another board member nodded. Then another. Ava could feel the shift, subtle but seismic. They took the vote. 7-5. Confidence upheld. She kept her face neutral. But inside, she felt something powerful unravel. Fear. Not her own, but theirs. They couldn't stop her. And now they knew it. The weeks following the vote were like fire through dry grass. Ava moved quickly. Brent Taylor? Gone. Marcus? Demoted to regional operations. In their place, she brought in new blood. Leaders who understood not just fashion but equity. People who had lived on the fringes of luxury, now guiding it from the center. One of her boldest moves came next, launching a new Elon initiative called Project Reflect, a mentorship and internship pipeline for young women from underrepresented communities to enter fashion, branding, and executive business tracks. The response was overwhelming. News outlets called it a blueprint for conscious capitalism. Customers, especially Gen Z and millennial buyers, rallied to the brand in droves. Sales hit record highs, and still some whispers lingered. She's pushing an agenda. She got lucky with the viral story. She'll burn out. But Ava didn't care anymore. Because the truth was this: she wasn't here to win them over. She was here to build something they couldn't ignore. One evening, long after most had gone home, Ava stood alone in the Madison Avenue store. The lights were dim, the mannequins frozen in soft poses behind the glass. She ran her fingers across the fabric of a dress on display. Sleek, bold, and unlike anything Elon would have sold a year ago. She remembered that first day. The condescension, the dismissal, the coldness. And now, silence. The kind of silence you earn when you've turned a rejection into revolution. Behind her, the door opened. It was Clara Bent. She looked different, less sharp, softer somehow. "I wanted to say..." Clara hesitated. "I left the company. I realized I was part of the problem. I'm sorry for how I treated you." Ava turned. For a moment, the two women just stood there, the tension of the past suspended in air. Then Ava nodded. "I hope you find something better." Clara blinked, surprised. Then slowly, she left. 2 years had passed since Ava Matthews took the helm of Elon. The fashion industry, once a monolith of exclusion, was slowly reshaping itself. And at the epicenter of that change stood the woman who had once been told she didn't look like an Elon customer. But now she wasn't just the customer. She was the blueprint, and her impact had rippled beyond boardrooms and boutiques. It began quietly at first. One by one, women who had long been denied access to the fashion world stepped forward. Not just models and stylists, but photographers, textile designers, merchandisers, and retail managers. Women of color, trans women, women from underserved communities. They shared their stories of rejection, humiliation, invisibility. And then they shared something else, hope, because they had seen Ava do it. Publicly, unapologetically, successfully. Ava's inbox filled weekly with letters from young women around the world. One was from a 19-year-old in Lagos who had sewn dresses from scraps and now dreamed of working in haute couture. Another came from a single mother in Detroit who had taught herself design on YouTube and was now launching a sustainable fashion line inspired by Afro-Caribbean fabrics. They didn't just want a seat at the table anymore. They wanted to build their own. And Ava made sure they could. The Elon Empowerment Collective, an incubator for marginalized creators in fashion, was born in the spring of Ava's third year. It offered grants, mentorship, workspace, and access to manufacturing resources, bridging the very gap that had kept so many brilliant minds on the outside. Within a year, 3 of the program's designers had landed collections in New York Fashion Week. And for the first time in the brand's 50-year history, Elon released a co-created capsule collection featuring designs from all 5 continents, modeled entirely by non-traditional faces. Plus-size models, models with vitiligo, hijabi influencers, queer icons. It wasn't about trend-chasing. It was reality, elevated, celebrated, and finally reflected. But Ava never forgot where it started. One fall morning, she returned quietly to the boutique on Madison Avenue, the same store where it all began. Only this time, she didn't wear a power suit. No entourage, no cameras, just jeans, a soft wool sweater, and her natural curls pulled back into a scarf. She walked through the double glass doors. The store had changed dramatically. Earth-toned walls replaced sterile whites. Staff uniforms now bore a blend of textures and cultural influences. A mural stretched across the back wall, showing women from every background, linked arm in arm, rising above the skyline. A young sales associate greeted her. A black girl, maybe 22, her smile genuine. "Welcome to Elon," she said warmly. "Can I help you find anything today?" Ava smiled. "No, I'm just browsing, taking it all in. Let me know if you need anything." She turned to help another customer. Ava wandered the floor, fingers grazing hangers. For a moment, she closed her eyes. She could still hear it. Clara's cold voice, the stinging rejection, the way her skin had felt too visible that day. But now her skin was not a barrier. It was a banner. Later, she met with her leadership team in the penthouse conference suite. The skyline behind them shimmered, but all eyes were on Ava as she stepped forward with her final address as acting CEO. "I never intended to stay in this seat forever," she began. "This was never about my ego. It was about making space. Real space." She paused, letting her words breathe. "The systems that kept me out were never meant to be reformed. They were meant to be replaced. And we've done that. But a true legacy isn't built on the strength of one woman. It's built when others rise and take the torch further." She looked toward her successor, a woman she had mentored personally, an Afro-Latina industry disruptor who had come up through the Empowerment Collective. "I am proud to announce that Elon's next CEO is someone who understands that fashion is more than fabric. It's a mirror, and the world deserves to see its full reflection." The applause was thunderous. A few days later, a video was uploaded to Elon's official YouTube channel. The thumbnail, Ava standing in front of the original boutique, sunlight haloing her figure. The title, "From Rejected to Revolutionary, My Elon Story." In the video, Ava spoke directly to camera. "Years ago, I was denied service in this store because of my skin. They saw me as less than, invisible, a threat to their image. But I didn't fight back with anger. I fought with ownership. I bought the company that denied me. She paused, eyes steady. Not for revenge, but for every girl who's ever been told she doesn't belong. For every woman who's ever been invisible in a room she was qualified to lead. This isn't just my story. It's yours. The video closed with the Empowerment Collective's new motto. We don't knock on doors. We build new ones. It trended for days. Over 18 million views. Ava's journey was picked up by global media outlets, academic panels, and even inspired a limited docuseries. But for Ava, the real victory was quiet. It was seeing a girl with braids walk confidently into a boutique and feel seen. A new era. In the end, Ava Matthews wasn't remembered just as the woman who bought the company that rejected her. She was remembered as the woman who redefined what ownership meant. Not possession, but inclusion. Not status, but power with purpose. She didn't just change fashion. She changed who got to shape it. And in doing so, she didn't just close the chapter on her story. She opened the door for